time to review some Switch games, guys. My name is Midnight Strike 3625, and today we are going to be talking about one of the best games for the series, as well as being a launch title for the Nintendo Switch. That is, of course, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This game is easily one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch. It is a masterpiece from the corner to corners of Hyrule. It is one of the best games in the series, if not the very best, and pretty much everything about it just screams polish and goes to show for the amount of care that was gone into the development cycle of this game. Now, before this, we hadn't really gotten an actual Legend of Zelda game in the main series since 2011's Skyward Sword for the Nintendo Wii. We didn't really get a full-fledged Zelda game for Nintendo's next console, the Wii U, until this came out, Breath of the Wild, right here. So this was actually a last final hurrah for the Wii U as it was being sent off by the new Nintendo Switch. And in my opinion, I got the Nintendo Switch version right here, and it is an absolute masterpiece, like I said before, with only a couple of flaws. But see, the only thing that holds this game back from being absolutely perfect is a couple of very glaring flaws that get in the middle of what's otherwise a very seamlessly fun and awesome gaming experience. So to get started, the plot of this game is just as straightforward as it always has been in every Zelda game before it. You play as Link, you're trying to save the princess, and in this world, this actually comes 100 years after Calamity Ganon took over Hyrule, the Kingdom of Hyrule, and tried to exert his power all over the Four Lands. Now, you must free the divine beasts in order to take on Ganon 100 years after Calamity Ganon first came to Hyrule, and Princess Zelda is actually trapping him within Hyrule Castle, so he can't escape, but his power is growing every single day. Now, 100 years have gone by, and Link is the hero that can come and save the day, so your job is basically to free the divine beasts and go after Calamity Ganon once you have the strength to do so. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, it's actually not, because there's a lot of different quest lines that you can uncover and achieve along the way. There's a lot of different weapons variations and varieties, and there's so many different ways to complete each quest that pretty much each and every playthrough will be different. Now, what's new in Breath of the Wild is the food mechanic, the cooking mechanic, where you can actually set up camp pretty much anywhere as long as you have firewood and flint, and cook your food if you have a pot. If you have a pot, you can actually cook a bunch of different recipes which have different effects on, say, your health, your stamina, your status, and just whether or not you're resistant to cold or electricity or various other types of enemies or statuses. So when it comes to the actual combat of the game, I would say that they overhauled it pretty nicely. It still feels very similar to the earlier generation Zelda games, and it's a bit of a throwback to, say, Twilight Princess as well, and the cel-shaded Wind Waker graphics in the presentation. But I must say, I am very impressed with the style of this game. It doesn't exactly have to be absolutely 100% realistic. It is a game about a cartoon elf named Link trying to save a princess from Calamity Ganon, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% realistic. I do think that the style complements pretty much everything about the game, and they did make it look absolutely breathtaking and jaw-dropping in its presentation, especially with some of the lighting effects as well as the textures. And I really didn't know that the Switch was capable of making such a deep, in-depth, and big open-world title while making it look as good as it does. I mean, you got a lot of ports from a lot of games that came out years ago on the PlayStation 4 that you didn't really think that the Switch was capable of handling, and really, in all honesty, judging from the screenshots, it's really not. I mean, if you look at The Witcher 3 or some of the other games that have been released that are bigger games, bigger blockbuster AAA titles, they look very condensed on the Nintendo Switch. But that is definitely not the case for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is pretty interesting because it is one of the first games released for the Switch. Now, in addition to the sheer variety of weapons, of player's choice, of different quest lines, and especially locations in the Kingdom of Hyrule, in addition to all of this, you now have a stamina wheel. And that is where my problem with the game start to become a little bit more glaring. The problems of the game, I should say. It's not just my problems. Stamina becomes an integral part of pretty much everything, almost to the point of ridiculousness. Now, I don't say that as a absolute deal breaker for the game, because it's still a 100% masterpiece. However, the stamina wheel gets very, very jarring and glaring, especially when all you're doing is swimming in very shallow water and your stamina wheel depletes all the way. Suddenly you're dead. Or if you're using the paraglider, which is another new mechanic where you can jump off high buildings and tall towers with the paraglider, your stamina wheel depletes, you let go of the paraglider, and you fall to your death. There's just some of the things that the developers of this game, that Nintendo, that's the developer, should have thought of before putting it in the game. The stamina wheel is good for some things, such as running, jumping, climbing, but it depletes way too fast, and you don't actually get a lot of control over how much your stamina wheel, or how fast your stamina wheel depletes until much later on in the game, and that might actually turn a lot of people off who want to get this game but have been a little bit more on the fence. They might not actually finish it, and that was one of my worries when I first started playing the game, is this seriously how fast the stamina wheel depletes? Am I going to be able to actually climb anything or really do anything at all? So the stamina wheel is an issue. The other issue is sort of a mixed bag, and that is the deterioration of the weapons. Weapons degradation is another huge issue, because there's no meter. It doesn't tell you how long your weapons have or how many uses you can get out of them before they break, and weapons break far too easily. Now, there was a lot of rumors back in the day of 2017, 2018, back in the early days of Breath of the Wild, when this game first came out. Within the first year, they said that they were going to patch it and make it so that weapons actually last a little bit longer. But I think they should have gone full circle and actually added a weapons meter, a health meter for the weapons. If they want to go the weapons degradation route, that's fine. I have nothing wrong against that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, it's a lot of a challenge. It's much of a challenge to be plotting out different boss routes as well as dungeons and taking on various enemies when you don't know how long your weapon is actually going to function before it breaks. Because there's nothing worse, and I've had it happen a bunch of times, than being in the middle of a boss fight at the end of a Divine Beast dungeon, and all of a sudden your weapon breaks. And you're basically fucked at that point. So that's another problem with the game. Other than that, though, there's a lot of different choices for players to get into and basically just sink their teeth into what a wonderful open world game this is. And you don't even have to get the Divine Beasts in order to face off with Calamity Ganon. Right after the Great Plateau level, which is actually the prologue of the game where you start out, where the Temple of Time is. So, right after that point, you can actually venture right into the castle, right into Hyrule Castle, and fight the final boss. Now, granted, you're probably going to get your ass handed to you, but you can still do it. That is a player's choice, and I think that is absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love that about this game. So, all in all, this game is not perfect, but it is very, very close to it. And I'm going to give it a score that I reserve for things that are just shy of perfect, and they're almost perfect, but they just got one or two glaring problems, we'll say, that hold it back. And that is a 9.8 out of 10. This is Midnight Strike 3625. I absolutely love this game and recommend the shit out of it right here. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Wonderful. Keep calm and rock on.